Where does this masterpiece fall? Let's rank this film on the Cageometer.
All right, that leads us over to the most important question. Vince, forever, for some reason, first. Where does Red Rock West from 1993 rate on your Cageometer?
Ooh, so for film, I'll give it a 7. Like I said before, I feel like this is very reminiscent of the time it came out. For me, it just feels like those early 90s to mid 90s movies where it's like a whodunit, thriller. Now knowing a little bit more about the film, I definitely can understand why there were some parts that seemed a little stale to me. They probably weren't doing a lot of retakes or giving them an option to do another take on scenes. So at some points, some of the dialogue or the performances seemed a little stale. It's probably because they were just like, let's move on. Because back then they were shooting on film. So to keep budget down, you got to move and hustle. But overall, I thought the story... It's a typical story, nothing too great about it, but I do like the fact that they kept it tight and the tension. They did a really good job at building tension into the movie and making it fit as it was going along. It never seemed shoehorned other than the papers part like that. But then that could be explained like they're hurrying and they're not thinking about it. And how many times have you been in a panic where you're trying to clean, you're trying to like get away with doing something, especially when we were kids, right? You don't always think about putting everything back perfect. So I can forgive that sin. I liked the performances. I really liked Wayne's character development throughout. He comes off as like kind of like this remorseful husband who's killing his wife. You don't know why he wants to kill her, to then trying to be like this badass. And then the moment that deputy gets shot in the head, that all dissolves. And you see this is just a normal man who's now way out of his league. And then he's got to try to figure his way out of the situation he's in. Even to the point where that standoff at the end between him and Lyle, he's like shaking, like he's physically shaking and he's way out of his fucking element. And I really like that they didn't have like, they had this guy develop, even though you don't really get that a lot, or you didn't expect it. And you see like his true character by the end of it. I really like the fact that the cops weren't fucking idiots and that they were piecing it together. Dennis Hopper, right? So, and then I think Suzanne's character was an interesting take on it too. She comes off as powerless, but by the end of it you realize that she's most likely the one that orchestrated the whole theft in the beginning. Like she encouraged Wayne to steal, or Kevin, whatever his fucking name is, to steal the money, right? Yeah. So I like that there was character development and you actually felt like there was a backstory to these characters and they weren't just two-dimensional. Acting wise for Nick, 7. I mean, it was like we said, there's a couple moments where he goes over the top and gets cagey, but throughout the rest of the film, I felt like he was pretty even keel, and I think he did a good job at portraying the dilemma that his character felt when it came to making decisions between right and wrong. I thought he did a pretty good job at conveying that. Like we'll always say, he's a great physical actor, and he gives that off in his expressions and his body language. But I mean, it's nothing to write home about. It's not a great performance. It's not a terrible performance. It was like a middle of the road. So I'll give him a 7 because I feel anything less would be too harsh. Anything higher would be me just sucking Nick's little Nicky, if you will. So 7's across the board. Fun film to watch.
Yeah. All right, Nigel, where does Red Rock West rate on your Cageometer?
Well, we kind of said it at the start of that. This is kind of one of those hidden gems that I think will be every season we've had kind of one that comes out as a hidden gem. I think it was, it was like Mandy and then The Trust. And I think this will be this one for this season, unless something really comes out of left field. But this one's it's a good movie. I was really surprised, especially because I'd never heard of it before this. And like we said, it's really hard to find a watchable version of it. So I don't think a lot of people have heard of it either, let alone seen it. But yeah, it was a good thriller. I said the pacing was great. I was always engaged in what was going on. The story did feel like a natural progression of events. We've seen bad scripts where shit just happens in the script and it's like they just need this to happen, so this is what happens. And like this had that, but it was all grounded in mostly reality. Like it felt like realistic twists and turns that would happen as as a result of the story. with some questionable stuff like the safe paper and why the hell Lyle decides to just floor it into a train, but again, it ramps the scene up. So it's like, well, you didn't see that coming, and it made things expecting. So, the performances were good. So I give this one an 8 out of 10. I don't think it's like a must watch, but I think it's a pretty good one to see if you can find a version of it to watch. I do recommend it. I think it's a good movie that most people may have missed.
Good if thriller. You can find it, it's a great, it's pretty hard to find though for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's a good blending of like Western and neo-noir and 90s thriller style and mystery. So it's a pretty good. I'm surprised we haven't heard of, or I haven't heard of. What's the director's name again?
John Dahl.
John Dahl.
Yeah, it's probably I'd never heard of John Dahl before, and kind of surprised about it. I feel like he should be a bigger name than what he is. Based on this film alone.
Did you say that you looked to see if you could find it on streaming somewhere?
Yeah, I couldn't find it at least as of recording. I couldn't find it even to rent. I couldn't find it available on any subscription service. I can only find copies on eBay, basically, that are either old, like you said, DVDs from probably the mid to late 90s or European region lock Blu-rays. So
it's crazy. It's crazy that it's a Nick Cage, Laura Flynn Boyle, Dennis Hopper film, and
critically acclaimed.
Yeah, 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, and you can't find a physical copy anywhere or like even streaming.
It just feels like something where whoever has the rights to it just has done nothing with it because it was kind of a box office flop, which is weird. We've had those before, and you can go buy Arsenal right now, or you can go buy Stolen. It's like why is nobody? Maybe there is a rights issue. Like we don't know. Sometimes that happens. We don't know who owns the rights. It's too complicated to try and deal with it, so they just don't bother to sort it out.
And sometimes the people who own the rights die, and then it gets put into some sort of trust, and then
So maybe somebody will stick it on YouTube one of these days and can see if it'll be available for people.
Yeah.
And then no one will take it down because who the fuck owns it to copyright strike it? But yeah. So yeah, good movie. As far as Cage's performance, I'll give him a 7 as well. I thought that he was pretty good. He's serviceable. He's we've seen him in this role before where he's just kind of an everyman who's a little bit of a badass until you dig deeper into his character and uncover part of it. I do feel like he didn't bring a whole lot to it. Like he could have been swapped with anybody else. You mentioned Dennis Hopper wanted Chris Christopherson to do it. I think I've been trying to picture that as we've talked about it. I'm like, yeah, I think that could work. It would have been a slight change of the character, a little bit older, a little bit more grizzled, and would have added more of that Western feel to it. But I think it would have been, could have been a good swap out. So I don't think this is a standout Cage performance, but it's pretty good, serviceable. I won't give him a bad score for it.
Yeah.
I just don't think he did a lot that was overly memorable, aside from a couple of the cagey lines, but it's nothing we haven't seen before or since with him. So I also feel like Lara Flynn Boyle and Dennis Hopper and JT Walsh kind of all shined over him a little bit.
Yeah.
I think their performances were, I think, a bit more memorable than Cage as the leading man. But we do get to spend a lot of time with him as the main character, which is nice. But I think all those other characters kind of are more watchable and did a better job than him. So, it's not a bad performance, not a bad film.
He's kind of like the audience insert, really, in this film.
Yeah. And I like that. It's not an exactly stranger in a strange land story, but it's kind of stranger in strange circumstances. You know, I think I've talked about it before. I like that framing for a story. So, but there wasn't really anything he did that was like super standout or, super interesting from the character's point of view.
On my Cageometer, I went right up with Nigel. I had the exact same score as 8 for the film. Like you said, everybody brought something to it. Cage is kind of just the everyman, just the standard, like I said, like the audience insert, just so we can have somebody to put, our place in this crazy mishmash of insanity into, and just watching him just slowly make one mistake after another that snowballs into this crazy thing. But yeah, for the acting, like you said, I feel like Laura Flynn Boyle and Dennis Hopper and J.T. Walsh kind of outshined him and really brought something amazing to it. All three of them. I wish Laura Flynn Boyle would have done more films, but I feel like she got kind of, I don't know, she weirdly became like a tabloid darling for some reason, and now they just make fun of her in the tabloids all the time for being old, which is really sad. But then J.T. Walsh, I've always loved that guy. He always manages to be memorable, if not kind of like you end up hating him in the roles that he does. And that's a testament to how great he is as an actor. And it's so sad that he died so young. I think he was only like 54 or something like that, 52. Don't smoke, kids. But yeah, and then I felt like going down the list, the cinematography was beautiful throughout. The graveyard at the end was a little, I don't know, a
little jarring.
It felt a little, like a
Universal
Halloween
horror movie.
Halloween set. Yeah. Music was great. Brought something to it, but didn't detract from it. The editing, like we said, there are a couple things that are kind of confusing, but for the most part, the pacing was great. I felt like it was very well paced. I mean, 98 minutes. And there's a lot that's going on, even though it's kind of a simple story. There's a lot of pieces that have to fall in place for this finale to happen. But overall, I thought it's a great movie. I hadn't seen it in a long time, and I just remembered it being really good. And I was afraid I was going to watch it and not like it as much as I did back in the 90s, I guess, when the last time I saw it. But holds up. I think it holds up really well. Kind of has like a Coen Brothers, but David Lynch feel to it. And like Vince said, it's a product of the 90s. Like there were so many movies that kind of like had this look and feel to them, but it does a really good job of it. So great movie. 8 out of 10. It's not the best movie we've ever watched, but it's definitely one I would recommend. For sure. Yeah. For Cage, same thing. I gave him a 7, like you guys did. Didn't really bring a whole lot to it, but he definitely didn't detract from it. He's a great everyman in this, which, at this point in his career, he hadn't played a whole lot of everyman.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe this was really good acting out of Cage because he managed to restrain himself and not be, Peter Lowe from Vampire's Kiss or Sailor Ripley or his character from Moonstruck or Raising Arizona. Like he's very far from those characters in this movie. Yeah. Or his fucking character
Charlie
from Peggy Sue Got Married. Holy shit. So, maybe we should be rating him higher for restraining himself, but had some great cagey moments. Even though they were few and far between, they were very memorable, especially the fuck Mexico moments.
I want that as a ringtone.
It's so good. But yeah, nothing crazy, but still great acting, overall. 7. Yeah. C. Got a C.